have a 100,000-plus sellout crowd at the Catalunya circuit just north of Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix, race 5 in F1 2004. It's 66 laps, 190 miles, but those first 600 metres are absolutely pivotal. Here's Martin Brundle, and first of all, it's James Allen.
Thank you, Jim. Afternoon, everybody. Well, this is Michael Schumacher's 200th Grand Prix today, and it takes place on a Barcelona track where he clinched his first win for Ferrari way back in 1996. Since then, he's won roughly half of all the Grand Prix held. 54 wins in total for the Ferrari team. Now, BAR yesterday in qualifying presented him quite literally with an open goal. They had the car to annex the front row of the grid, but Jenson Button made a mistake and ended up 14th, while Takuma Sato was a little bit cautious in the final sector and ended up 3rd on the grid. Now, the Japanese driver can still get his first podium here today, but there is definitely a feeling of what might have been at the BAR team, who totally dominated the practice sessions here today. It'll be very interesting to see how they go today. They have got potentially the fastest car in the field. As we've heard from Mark and Jim, the start will definitely be interesting. Juan Pablo Montoya, starting on the outside of the front row, knows that his only chance to race Michael Schumacher today will be if he can pass him into the first corner. Now, the Formula One cars accelerate from 0 to 125 miles an hour in 5 seconds, by which time a Porsche 911 would barely be doing 60 miles an hour. So you can imagine there's going to be an awful lot of speed and energy when these two very combative drivers both reach turn 1. And keep an eye also on Jarno Trulli. We heard from him on the grid. He's starting 4th today, and he's made up at least 2 places, Martin, on every start so far this year. And that Renault really does get away nicely, doesn't it?
Yes, Alonso said to me that they've been working even harder on it too, and it's a long run down to the first corner, and we're all convinced that, and whether it proves to be correct or not, we'll find out shortly, that the Bridgestones don't work too well until they're up to full operating temperature, sort of 2/3, 3/4 of the way around the first lap at least. So will Michael be swamped heading down to the first corner? I think he'll be running his car as light as reasonably possible to give himself a better chance. You've got to accelerate that mass. You were talking about the incredible acceleration these cars have, but you still, if you put another 10-kilo dumbbell in that and try and accelerate that to 125 miles an hour, it will slow you down. So Michael will be as skinny on fuel as any of them, but he'll be very keen to get down to that first corner first.
Well, strategy-wise, I think it's going to be quite interesting. Most people are expecting the drivers to do 3 stops here this afternoon. Last year we saw the first car stopping around lap 18 or 19, but everybody's been a lot more aggressive in 2004, as Martin said, running skinny on fuel, and we expect to see Schumacher coming in around about lap 8 or 9, and most of the front runners as well. But I just have a little hunch, Martin. I've been doing a bit of work in the paddock overnight. I have a hunch Rubens Barrichello might be trying a 2-stop today. He was 1.2 seconds behind Michael Schumacher in qualifying, and the fuel load difference is about 8.5 tenths. He's normally about 3-4 tenths of a second slower than Michael Schumacher generally. And just looking at the way, talking to some of the engineers, the way that the Ferrari is using the Bridgestone tyres, it's conceivable that Barrichello could run that little bit longer. And if I'm right, he's going to spring his trap on Montoya and Sato in front of him when they come out of their second stops here this afternoon. So watch out for that.
Well, he did say after yesterday's qualifying, look, let me tell you one thing, I'm very happy with my lap time. Well, being 1.2 seconds behind your teammate, you're never going to be very happy about that unless there's another reason for it, and we'll have to wait and see. But it could well be a smart move, but that's as close as a driver dare get to contractually breaching all of his confidentiality clause in his contract of telling the world what the strategy is, because clearly you want to justify why your teammate's blown your doors off.
Magnificent new grandstand. We're standing in the glass boxes just at the very top. You can see on the left of your screens we're about halfway along, looking right down on the cars on the grid. You can see Olivier Panis there and Fernando Alonso, the local hero. 110,000 people packed into this circuit to Catalunya. A few years ago you could get a ticket on race day, and then Fernando Alonso turned up, and the queues are miles and miles to get into the track. 95% of the punters here looking for a Spanish success. But can this man, Michael Schumacher, make it 5 in a row at the start of the 2004 season? A bit slow getting away on the pit wall side, but I think everyone's got away cleanly.
Yes, they appear to have done. They can slot back in when they get round into their, as long as they're not left on the grid completely and therefore last away. If they're last away, they have to stay at the back. Providing you get away roughly in order, you're okay. And there's a side look. Coulthard 9th, Raikkonen 12th, 5 points between them. And they'll be hoping for a stronger run here today.
It's a pretty tight grid. Only half a second separates 4th place Jarno Trulli from 10th place David Coulthard, and that shows the level of competitiveness in that pack behind the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher particularly. There we have a nice onboard shot with Fernando Alonso. So watch out for a tight midfield battle today, and that will definitely play into the race strategies of the leaders as well, because bear in mind they're going to feed back into that melee. But you can see these grandstands that once stood empty are now absolutely packed to the rafters.
Great venue. Good feeling. Drivers know this place like the back of their hands, literally, because they test here relentlessly. So they're going to feel pretty at home here. This is almost the home circuit, really, for Grand Prix racing.
It's funny, isn't it? I was here in... oh, no, not one of these. Hopefully we can get him off the track before the cars come round. Certainly the Marshals, Marshals closing in on him, just like Silverstone last year.
They're 2 corners away. The cars are now 2 corners away, but travelling very slowly, of course. And, well, he said it felt like a bullfighter down there. If he'd had a red rag in his hand, it would look as if exactly what he was trying to achieve down there. But they've got hold of him. The cars, Pasquale there, organising the timely exit there of the spectator.
It's interesting, he's like sort of, Jesus turns up in the right place always, doesn't he? Pasquale Latinedu there, Bernie Ecclestone's right-hand man, and that interloper safely off the track before Michael Schumacher brings the field round. Well, he had his mindless moment, but now we can focus on some real Grand Prix racing.
Had his sign back to front, so wouldn't even know what it said if it was in English. But anyway, he's got on. And the cars are on the grid, desperately trying to pump some heat into those rear tyres that they're going to rely so heavily on in just a while.
Also just missing the back there of Olivier Panis's Toyota. Speed differential's pretty frightening. You can see these grid hatchings here, 8 metres apart. So Montoya there on the left, starting 8 metres behind Michael Schumacher. What's going to happen here then? No love lost. He's staring across at his adversary. I'm going to have you, Schumacher, he's saying to himself. Watch out for Michael Schumacher cutting across as he did 12 months ago down the pit wall side. Will that be an opportunity for Sato, for Trulli? All will be revealed in a second. Last car in place. The lights will go on. When they go off, we'll be racing in Spain and the duel will begin. Montoya's on the inside of Sato. Montoya's had a stinker of a start, and Rubens Barrichello has held on to 5th place, but Alonso has got himself up to 6th. But Jarno Trulli has used that Renault system, and off he goes. He leads in Barcelona.
Yes, perfect start. Just kept it straight all the way down to the first corner. Michael had no chance there. It looked like Sato had a sniff too of picking up 2nd place. Schumacher just crowding him into the corner. No problems at all with that. But Michael will struggle to hang on to the Renault, I think, for the first few corners, and then he'll start applying the pressure. I think he'll be mighty relieved that it's a blue and yellow car in front of him and not Montoya, given all of the fuss they've had together. But truly it'll be no walkover, but it'll be, I think Michael will still be pretty satisfied the way that all worked out.
Nice to have a different leader in 2004, that's for sure. Trulli leads then, Schumacher 2nd, Sato is 3rd for BAR, Montoya is 4th, 5th is Barrichello, 6th Fernando Alonso, 7th is Olivier Panis, 8th David Coulthard. That's a good start from him from 10th on the grid. Dropping down to 9th is Ralf Schumacher, not a good start for him. Up to 10th is Kimi Raikkonen, so he too has made progress, and they come across the line now. Trulli has half a second lead over Schumacher.
And Jenson Button finished the first lap in 14th place, so didn't have a particularly good first lap. That's Coulthard under pressure from Ralf Schumacher for 8th and 9th. Trulli's lead was just half a second at the end of that first lap, and now you can see the Ferrari homing in and taking tighter lines, carrying more exit speed, and really looking strong. Sato, though, hanging on to them.
Fastest man on the racetrack on this second lap is Juan Montoya, obviously a bit narked by the poor start that he got. He didn't really look in it at all, did he, off the start line? We'd seen in the Formula 3000 race yesterday that the guy starting from the dirty side of the track, the pit wall side, got better grip than the pole sitter, but today that didn't happen, although you'd have to say it did for Trulli.
Well, Trulli did well because Montoya was very slow way off the front row with him. There's a car at the back of the grid, didn't get away, but no contact of any kind, but Trulli just rocketed through the gap, and I think Sato was sensible not trying to brake too late in there, otherwise he could easily have run into the side of Michael Schumacher. So Schumacher was indeed a comfortable second going in there. Now the gap remains at half a second. Sato 1.2 back from Trulli in third place. Montoya fourth, Barrichello fifth, then Alonso, Panis, Coulthard eighth, Ralf Schumacher ninth, Raikkonen up to 10th from 15th on the grid. Button remains 14th. I expected him to be coming through a little bit faster than that, James.
Certainly did expect that indeed. The big winners and losers then off the start. Clearly Jarno Trulli up 3 places into the lead. Alonso up 2. Ralf Schumacher down 3 places from the start line, and Webber also down 3 places. David Coulthard making up 2. So critical, isn't it, Martin, to make some places up at the start. I told you before that the BAR team have set a target of 5th place today for Jenson Button, and I think they were certainly considering he'd make up a few of those places at the start, but it didn't happen to him. I have to say also, I'm very impressed with the standard of driving. When you go and stand down at turn 1, considering how fast they're arriving there, it really is a pretty narrow piece of tarmac, and nobody hit each other.
Yep, well, they're all very aware you can't win the race on the first corner, but it doesn't stop. Occasionally some accidents down there. Just looking at Trulli's record, this is his 116th Grand Prix. He's had 1 second place and 2 third places in that time. So 3 podiums, never a victory. And now we see the BAR of Button passing D'Amata, and we know they've got prodigious straight line speed in that car. Good power from the Honda engine, and Jenson Button beginning to make his way through. He's now up to 13.
Yeah, Jarno Trulli's best results so far in his career. 2nd place at that rain-swept Nürburgring Grand Prix. You remember back in 1999 where Johnny Herbert won for Stewart with Rubens Barrichello and the other Stewart in 3rd place. Well, Jarno Trulli finished 2nd that day, and to date that's still his best finish in Formula 1. Had a podium last season as well. Struggling a little bit this weekend. I spoke to him yesterday after qualifying. He hardly had a voice at all. He got some sort of throat infection, and he looked frankly terrible, but he's obviously rallied himself today and has made a good start.
Ted is down in the pits with news on the track invader.
Yeah, I've got news on that geezer, Martin. Basically, he's an anti-capitalist protester. I spoke to him myself, and he said that he was objecting to King Juan Carlos inaugurating something called the Forum 2004 yesterday in Barcelona, which is essentially a big trade fair. He's against it. He's anti-capitalist, and that's what he was complaining and protesting about. It's good that it's nothing more sinister than that, I have to say, based on what happened in Madrid, of course. But he has been in a very nasty half Nelson, carted off by the police to jail.
Yeah, but I have to say we shouldn't give those messages airtime, because I really don't want to encourage people to do stupid things like run on racetracks. We do not want to see that anymore in Formula 1, and clearly the Barcelona authorities will have a bit of a headache there, because the security needs to be tighter, no doubt about that.
Now this is interesting here, but truly, as I said, he's never won a race, but he's very much putting a pace on that's challenging Michael Schumacher. I really thought Michael would be climbing all over his gearbox by now. The pair of them have stretched out a 3-second lead over Sato in 3rd, who's very much holding his own, with Montoya just at a watching distance behind him in 4th. But Trulli's pace is good.
Certainly is. That was Bruni just making a very early pit stop in the Minardi. Maybe it might have been him we saw stuck on the grid at the start. But Trulli, yes, lapping in the low 1:18. Michael Schumacher a couple of tenths a lap slower than him at the moment. And Sato's pace has dropped off quite a bit in the 4th lap. He was 0.8 of a second slower than Jarno Trulli on that lap, and he really does need to stay close to Michael Schumacher at this stage.
Trulli's got way better traction. That's in the slow corners, putting the power down into the tarmac in 2nd and 3rd gear, and just left Michael Schumacher dead. You always get a concertina effect like that. But Schumi's quicker in the fast corners, but that Renault is working better than the Ferrari in the slow corners. And just to prove it, Alonso is all over the back of Barrichello too. This is not what the form book suggested when you watch their long runs in practice.
No, it's interesting. They do long runs during the tests as well, and certainly throughout the winter, the Renault's long runs were very, very impressive, moving people like Ralf Schumacher. Sorry, Frank Williams to say that he thought Renault were a championship contender this season, but it's not been shown so far. But here at Barcelona, they do seem to have a good car under them, although a bit of a wiggle there for Alonso.
Yeah, he was fighting the car into turn 4 a couple before this. A lot of understeer in his car, which you do tend to see, particularly with Alonso's setup, but it does give you good traction out of the corners if you've got a touch of understeer. Just settles the back down nicely. But now then, Michael Schumacher coming back, Hakkinen and Beer, but they're the only two in the 18s. We've seen this, haven't we? A couple of guys get out front. It's all about who's trying to beat Michael Schumacher, and they just romp off into the distance. But Sato trying to respond.
I can imagine when you're leading a Grand Prix and you've got the big red car in your mirrors with that red Schumacher helmet, it would tend to raise your game a little bit, wouldn't it? And as you can see, just as Jenson Button did at Imola when he led the opening stint, Trulli is going very, very quickly indeed. Sato struggling to stay with him, as is Montoya, and now Schumacher just moving a bit closer to the back of Jarno Trulli. This is lap 7. We're expecting possibly Schumacher to come in the next 2 laps, other front runners as well, and then we'll find out exactly what Rubens Barrichello's strategy is. He's only 6.5 seconds behind the race leader at the moment. It's playing out quite nicely for him. Schumacher losing a bit of ground there, Martin.
Yeah, well, it's the slow corner aspect again, and Michael will be, I bet he's on the radio. I bet he's wondering, and that's why Ralf Schumacher did a slow lap, outbraked himself into turn 10, and they've been losing 3/4 of a second just scampering around the outside of there, and he fell back into the clutches of Raikkonen, who's 10, and released Coulthard by 1.5 seconds now, who's in front of him in 8. So good fights going on all the way through the field.
Yeah, Ralf Schumacher, one retirement this season, 2 7th place and a 4th. He's currently down in 9th place, so it's not been a stellar start to the year, has it, for Ralf Schumacher? A lot of rumours pushing him towards the Toyota team for next year. Now seems virtually certain he won't be racing with BMW Williams, and one hears little rumours that the Williams management are less than impressed with Ralf Schumacher. Did a stellar job for them back in 1999, but since then they feel his form has faded. And meanwhile, his brother has gone from strength to strength, and he's now closing in on the back of Trulli. Wondering whether this could be hurting Schumacher's strategy a little bit relative to Rubens. He was perhaps expecting to be in some clearer air than this, Martin.
Indeed he was. It's Trulli who just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Michael's responding with the fastest first sector of the Grand Prix so far. They're on lap 8. Sato now 4.6 seconds in arrears in 3rd place. Montoya, Barrichello, Alonso, Panis 7th, Coulthard 8th, Ralf Schumacher 9th, Raikkonen 10th, Jenson Button still in 13th, now just 1/2 second behind the Jaguar of Webber. So Jenson probably not siding through the field as we may have hoped.
Well, you need about 22 seconds here to make a pit stop and then rejoin. And if Trulli and Michael Schumacher pit in the near future, that will put them in around about 14th place. But we're expecting quite a lot of people to be making pit stops around the same sort of time. So it's about to get very jumbled up here in Barcelona in the next couple of laps, I think. 59 to go of this 66th lap Spanish Grand Prix. Then 1 lap more than last year, for those of you with eagle eyes who remember we had 65 laps last year. That's because the track is a little bit shorter due to the changes they made into turn 10.
New fastest lap from Michael Schumacher on an 18.3, and first to pit then is Alonso from 6th place. So Renault with not a lot of fuel on board. You can assume Trulli will be in the next lap then. So Schumacher's now pumping in the hot lap. This is Michael Schumacher's moment of the race, where he's going to have to leapfrog Trulli, I think, if they're into the pit stop zones. Let's wait and see if I'm right on the Trulli issue. Alonso exits after a solid stop.
This is working out quite nicely for Barrichello if he is running a slightly longer first stint. There you can see the race leader feeds back in behind the Jordan. I think that was Fisichella. He's fed in behind Fisichella, has he?
Yeah, it's
Sorry, not Fisichella, I beg your pardon, Heidfeld.
Yeah, it's Alonso, of course. So Trulli still out on track. Michael Schumacher looking ever closer. And last time around, he just got into his slipstream down into turn 1. Trulli locking the brake in 10, then just got away with it, taking his foot off the pedal, and the cadence braking on the way in there. But just beginning to look a touch ragged. And this is Alonso then recovering after that pit stop.
Yes, that was Alonso, of course, I beg your pardon, not the race leader, and he dropped in 17th place between Pantano and Klian, but he's just past Pantano. So Alonso and Trulli, we believe, is coming to the pits. Michael Schumacher takes over the lead of the Spanish Grand Prix. How much longer can he stay out, and can he do enough to get ahead of Trulli through these pit stops? Ted.
Montoya also in. He's come in very, very late. The mechanics have been out in the pit lane for quite a while. They're making an adjustment to the front wing because the tyres, the Michelin tyres, have been going off. There's a lot of brake dust coming off that right front. Now Kimi Räikkönen in.
Michael Schumacher will be the happiest man out there at the moment, not because he's leading, but because he's now established that the Renault was lighter than him and he was able to match its pace. So off goes Räikkönen, and then he was in a bit of a lonely 10th place. And Montoya's pitted, as Ted said. Michael Schumacher, they all said or suspected he might be very light, including myself, because of the incredible lap time he did for pole. But it just shows you he was just stunningly fast.
Well, it's interesting because I'm hearing that Shell have developed a fuel for this car, for this team, that is slightly lighter. It has the same power, but it allows them an extra lap and a half at a lot of racetracks. So in other words, it's the same volume of fuel that lets them go the distance, but it weighs less. And Schumacher's used it to good effect here. He comes in a lap later than Trulli, and we'll see whether or not he can get past. Sato, meanwhile, stays out.
Sato around again, and Michael Schumacher then put in the fastest first and second sectors on this lap, on the in lap. That's critical. It's the in lap plus the pit stop plus the out lap that makes the difference. And well, we'll find out how that works out. I suspect that might well put him ahead of Trulli.
Yeah, it certainly should do. It was a terrific lap. Takuma Sato then leads the Spanish Grand Prix. Where does he come back out? There's a Renault there, just in front of it.
Yeah, it's done the job. It was Michael's just so good at it. He knows when he's got to be absolutely on the ragged edge and pump those sectors in. Now, it's not just about laps now, it's about sectors that make the difference. As Coulthard departs the pit, did I see Ralf Schumacher in front of him? If so, that's a change of position.
Yeah, Ralf Schumacher has been in as well. Coulthard, Ralf Schumacher and Jenson Button made pit stops at the same time there on lap 11. This is Heidfeld just going round the Minardi of Zsolt Baumgartner, who got himself into trouble. That's 18th and 19th places. Those two are disputing. Meanwhile, Takuma Sato and Rubens Barrichello at the front. How much longer will Sato go for? In he comes. There's your answer.
Well, he led the Grand Prix, which is good news for him. And now then, Barrichello, of course, who's just pumped in a new fastest lap of the race. Barrichello was fueled more heavily than Michael Schumacher and leads the race and has not yet had to pit.
Now, the interesting thing is how many more laps can he do? I don't think Barrichello's going to be springing his track at the first pit stop that he does. I think it'll be the second stop for these guys, where Barrichello... 14 of the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona. James Allen and Martin Brundle with you. And who says Ferrari don't let their drivers race each other? Rubens Barrichello is leading, 11 seconds ahead. As you can see, Montoya going down the inside of Massa. That's a pass for 7th place. Montoya having made his first stop of the afternoon. Massa has not yet pitted. Barrichello leads Michael Schumacher by 11 seconds. Schumacher is on a very aggressive race strategy. He pitted on lap 10. He's on a 3-stop strategy, but Barrichello looks like he's on a 2. He's carrying more fuel, and they are racing each other at the moment because they're on a completely different pattern, and it's only going to shake out as the race goes on. And Michael Schumacher has realised what a race he's in. I think he was held up in the first stint by Jarno Trulli. It was critically important that he got past him in the pit stops. He's managed that. That's against Barrichello, really, as we see a replay of the Montoya move. So Barrichello would really have hoped that Michael might have popped out behind Trulli. That hasn't happened, and now Barrichello's got to do it all himself.
Yep. Rubens putting in some good lap times too, and clearly has not stopped. And if he can get it into a full 2-stop, and now we do fully believe and understand his statement, I am happy with my grid position and my lap time. He knows he's got a fast package underneath. We know the Bridgestones are hanging on well during the long runs, and Schumacher's having to really pump some sector times in no longer to beat Jarno Trulli. I noticed Michael's last 2 sectors into the pit smashed everybody else, and his first 2 out of his pit stop, and that's why he ended up ahead of the Renault. Now he's suddenly realised he's got to fight Ruben. Well, I say suddenly, he would have known all the details before the race started. I think he was just patient. I don't think Trulli really held him up because he wasn't that close to him, but he was just patient in those first few laps, and that's confidence for you. Coulthard must have had a problem in his pit stop. He has fallen behind Ralf Schumacher, Panis and Raikkonen. He's 13th, and Button is 14th at the moment, having also stopped once. So the Brits not having a good day at all. Just looking who's not stopped. Barrichello, Fisichella has not stopped yet, Massa, Klein, and the rest of them have all stopped. So it'll shuffle around a bit yet.
Well, we're hearing from our F1 ITV pit crew that there was a problem with the fuel hose on David Coulthard's car in the pit stop. Barrichello leading then on lap 16. The margin, 10.57. He's pegged it a little bit to Michael Schumacher. That last lap, he was 2/10 faster than his team leader. The lap before, Schumacher was 6/10 faster than Barrichello. Trulli is 3rd. Fisichella, who has yet to stop in the Sauber, is in 4th place. Sato is 5th. 6th is Alonso. 7th is Montoya. And 8th and last of the points-paying positions at the moment, Felipe Massa, who is doing a similar, 2 Saubers doing a similar strategy to that of Rubens Barrichello.
Jenson Button off screen is a few tenths behind Coulthard down the pit straight. Remember here last year, they tripped over each other when Jenson made the move. David didn't see him coming, and they collected each other at the apex. So a rerun of that is on the cards if they're not careful. As I say, they're down in 13th and 14th place. Remember now, of course, Michael Schumacher's car is heavier than Barrichello's. He has stopped, topped it up with fuel, and Rubens is running down his fuel, but Michael's got the fresher set of tyres.
Yes, and the received wisdom here was that a new set of tyres is what you really want to have, as we see Klein getting it very wrong at the reshaped turn 10 there in the Jaguar. Well, Schumacher is on a new set of tyres. Barrichello is using the old Bridgestones. They've been going now for 17 laps. And it appears that he's still getting a lap time out of them, and that is significant because that's what his strategy is based on. It's based on the Bridgestone tyre being durable and being able to do long runs. But interestingly, around this Barcelona track with these long right-handed corners, the left front tyre works 50% harder than the right. Now, a Formula One tyre only lasts 60 miles around this track. It's amazing, really, in comparison with your road car, where you'd expect to get 12,000 miles out of a set of tyres. You get just 60 out of a set here at Barcelona.
Yeah, I don't normally get road tyres that go quite that far, sadly, but we hear that Ferrari are getting ready to receive a car which must be Rubens Barrichello, and he's in good shape, I'd say. He's 10 seconds in the lead, and you're right to say it's over 20-odd seconds, so he's going to stop one less time than Michael. Michael's got some work to do this afternoon, and it'll be crucial just where Rubens feeds back into the field and how the traffic works for him. As he enters the pit lane now, it's a long run down to that speed line. So difficult to overshoot that. There it goes, and straight into the Ferrari pit, which is the first one in the lane, gives you a direct line in. Off come those tyres. It's the end of lap 17, lap 18 rather, and they're looking quite shiny where they scrubbed, couldn't see with the sun glinting off, and away he goes. Was there a little delay there, James? We cut away, but I just wondered if it was, yeah, of course, two-stopper, he'd be in the pit, he needs about 9.5 seconds worth of fuel, yeah?
Yeah, 9.5 seconds worth of fuel, about 63 kilos of fuel then going into his car, and that'll take him through to around about lap 40, we estimate. Meanwhile, Schumacher will be coming in again, probably about 26 to 28 lap 26 to 28, so that's where it's going to get very interesting. Schumacher basically needs to find about 24 seconds on the racetrack in order to make the extra stop he's going to need to do this afternoon. And he had a 10-second deficit to Barrichello when Barrichello made that stop. So we'll see how it shakes out when the two come through again and the computer writes itself. But that is Schumacher's quest here this afternoon. Barrichello then making his pit stop, giving the lead back to Michael Schumacher. Trulli, Sato and Fisichella making a pit stop as well. A lot of racing still to go here. Lap 20 of the 66-lap Spanish Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher on a quest to win the first 5 Grand Prix of the season. Only one man has ever done it before. That's Nigel Mansell back in 1992. But he's facing a stiff challenge here this afternoon from his own teammate, Rubens Barrichello, as we look at Zoltan Baumgartner in the Minardi, making his 3rd retirement of this 2004 season. The moment Schumacher then leading from Jarno Trulli in the Renault by 7 seconds. Rubens Barrichello is in 3rd place. He was 16 seconds behind his team leader at the end of the last lap, still waiting for him to come through. He's now 18 seconds behind. Schumacher is on a massive push at the moment. Sato is 4th, Alonso 5th. Montoya has had a slow pit stop and his pace is slow at the moment as well. Man who started 2nd on the grid is now 6th and going not very quickly. Ralf Schumacher, his colleague, teammate, is right behind him in 7th, and then Fisichella in 8th, making the most of that 2-stop Sauber strategy at the moment.
The BAR are 4th with Sato and 12th with Button at the moment now, and Louise is with Jeff Willis of the team.
Jeff, we're watching Sato holding station in 4th, but he's got Alonso coming up behind him pretty fast. How tricky is it going to be able to keep him behind him?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question at all.
How tricky is it going to be for Takuma to keep Alonso behind him? tricky will it be for Takuma to keep Alonso behind him?
I think, as you can see from Jenson and David Coulthard, it's very, very difficult to overtake here unless you have a significant speed advantage. So I think it's pretty easy to keep somebody behind you. You can only really pass using your pit stop strategy.
You've been watching Jenson and David having a few good battles as well. Were you expecting Jenson to make a bit more of an impression on this race?
We knew in advance it was going to be very difficult to overtake, and he had to make progress in the first couple of laps. Now it's going to be a pretty hard battle, and we'll be thinking of other ways of swapping our strategy around.
Thanks, Jeff.
That goes to show you just how amazing microphones are and how noisy a Formula One car is. If you've never seen a Formula One car live, you would be staggered at how noisy it is. You cannot hear yourself think, and that's why Louise was struggling to get that question through, and you just have to wait for a slight lull in the track action. But as they're revving to 19,000 RPM, the noise is somewhat piercing and brilliant, I have to say.
It's fantastic. It's a bit like standing underneath Concorde when it takes off. Amazing amount of noise at a Formula One Grand Prix. If you ever come to one, make sure to pack some earplugs. Schumacher leads Trulli by 8 seconds then. Barrichello is not keeping the pace up. His fuel load, he's taken on a 2-stop fuel load. It's weighing him down at the moment. He's 1.3 seconds a lap slower than Michael Schumacher, who has responded to the challenge from his own teammate. And I'm interested to hear Jeff Willis saying they might try and play around with Jenson's strategy. I thought the time to do that would have been the first pit stop, but at the moment it doesn't seem to be working all that well for him. There's not much they can do, really, is there?
Now he's tucked up behind David, but if he wasn't behind David, he'd be tucked up behind Raikkonen. They're all lapping pretty much the same pace. Sato's about a second faster than Jenson, so that gives you the idea of what it's costing him. He's got the faster car, but there's so much turbulence coming off that last corner. You just can't get anywhere near them down the pit straight. But talking about that noise, apparently it's about 140 decibels, which is why when you get a group of old racing drivers together, we're all muttering into each other's ears, saying, what, pardon? Because you do damage your ears quite significantly.
Well, Juan Pablo Montoya, I mentioned, is in 6th place at the moment. Ted, have you got some news for us?
Yeah, Benito Williams, he did put on a lot of front flap, a lot of front downforce at that first pit stop, and I think that might have upset the handling. Also, his front right brake was fully on fire during just coming out of that pit stop, so I think he might have some braking problems in that Williams too.
That would be surprising, because this is not a heavy braking circuit. The big stops that there are around here are well spaced out with a long straight in between, so that's very surprising. They do tend to smoke a little bit. Just watching Alonso's car when we were on board, he does have some horrible understeer, compounded by the turbulent air coming off that BAR in front of him, but his car nowhere near as well set up as Jarno Trulli, who just pits from 2nd place. Trulli 11 seconds adrift of Michael Schumacher, and the first stopper in the first round of stops, and there he is, Trulli in the Renault, but going well, got a good pace.
Well, it indicates that they short-fueled him the first time round. They were going to try and keep him ahead of Michael Schumacher, because he came in just a lap earlier than Schumacher, but this is a very early second stop for Trulli, so that gamble didn't pay off for the Renault team, and Trulli wasn't able to keep the pace up, or he matched the pace, let's say, of Michael Schumacher, which was absolutely stunning in that early part of around the pit stop. So that's what Renault were trying to do, but it didn't work for them, and Trulli is back out again.
Yeah, the wheels have come off Barrichello's charge as well. He's now 21 seconds adrift of Michael with a pit stop in his pocket. He's lapping about 6/10 slower, so I think Rubens pushed his tyres so hard. Unfortunately, he's paying a heavy price, unless it's just traffic-induced that we're not seeing. There then is Jarno Trulli, who's going to have rejoined, I guess, 7th or 8th at the moment. We'll have to wait until they've all been in for their second stops.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because the teammates always sit down together, don't they, and analyse and debrief after the qualifying sessions and the practices. And one would have thought they would both know what each other's race strategies were. I wonder to what extent Schumacher and Barrichello were privy to each other's race strategies yesterday. I would imagine they both knew exactly what the other was doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, unquestionably they would share that information in the team, and it probably divided it up to cover both strategies. But a young man doing very well today is Fisichella. Up into 8th place on the same tyres as the lead Ferrari, and today is a good opportunity for the Sauber team to score a World Championship point or two. No doubt about it. Panis hanging on in 9th. Raikkonen, Coulthard and Button 10, 11 and 12 basically going nowhere, and lapping 3 seconds slower than the lap Michael Schumacher's just put in, 3 seconds. He's just done a 1:17.6, matching last year's pole position time, and he's just cruising around in the middle of a Grand Prix and beginning to punish the others.
Certainly is. On board with Alonso. Rev counter on the left there. You can see the engine redlining at the moment. Just under 18,000 RPM. Last year we saw 19,000 RPM. As into the pits comes the race leader, Michael Schumacher. Second scheduled stop, bang on target, lap 26. Exactly as we thought it would be. And I'm sure another clockwork stop here on a new set of tyres, which are always an advantage here at Barcelona. And that really has been very bad news indeed for Rubens Barrichello. If he could have stayed in front of Michael, he would have nullified the advantage of Michael Schumacher's new tyres, and anything could have happened from there. But really, you have to say Schumacher has driven amazingly well, considering he started behind Jarno Trulli and had to pace himself in the opening stint. Once again, the cards falling very much in Schumacher's favour. Ted is in the pits. Montoya comes in.
Montoya stops right in front of me. Do they readjust that front wing? Yes, they do. More Michelin tyres on. A bit of a check of the front wing. Now they let him away. It's a good stop. Let's see if his pace picks up.
Well, we were watching Takuma Sato while Montoya was making that stop. Sato also making his pit stop, second of the day, second of 3 for the BAR Honda driver, on target for his first podium in Formula 1 and the first podium for a Japanese driver since Aguri Suzuki way back in the early 1990s, which is to date the only podium for a Japanese driver. And Sato driving very solidly here this afternoon after a tricky practice session. Lost the clutch on Friday afternoon, lost valuable lap times there, opportunity to set the car up. Responded very, very well yesterday with the fastest time of the weekend in the free practice session yesterday morning, and then a good lap in qualifying, albeit one that he knows was not quite as quick as he might have done. The front row was begging for BAR Honda, but neither he nor Jenson Button could capitalise. Nevertheless, a solid drive this afternoon for Sato.
Yeah, Michael just romping away now, 7/10 faster than Rubens on that lap, despite carrying a heavier fuel load at this stage of the Grand Prix after the recent stop. Jordan ahead of him, who just jumps out of the way. That's Nick Heidfeld, who's down in 17th place. Qualified well, Heidfeld, for the speed of the car, but clearly not having a good Grand Prix. Just one retirement then. Baumgartner spun off in the Minardi. 19 runners at this time. Alonso, a man on the move, and it appears as if he has leapfrogged Sato. Sato may well be down to 5th place as Coulthard pits at a sticky fuel nozzle last time. That's just to his right ear, left, and yeah, it's sticking again, look, and slow out. So a problem there with the refueling, and it's costing Coulthard dearly.
Well, there we are. We didn't see it when Sato emerged, but in fact he was behind Alonso, as you say, Martin. So whether it was a slightly slower pit stop than expected or Alonso had a very, very strong lap, but either way, Alonso ahead of Sato, and that's blown the Japanese driver's podium quest off course at the moment. Schumacher then 3.5 seconds clear of Rubens Barrichello. We're expecting Barrichello to make his second stop, not for another 10 laps or so. And that's going to be a very, very long 10 laps for Rubens Barrichello, staring at the back wing of his team leader, who can now control the pace of this Grand Prix. He leads Barrichello then 3.5. Trulli is 3rd. Alonso 4th ahead of Sato, 5th. Fisichella is 6th. Montoya 7th. Raikkonen 8th in a points position once again for the McLaren driver. And it would only be his 2nd points finish of the year if he could stay there. Button's got himself up to 9th, but has now had to make his 2nd stop of the afternoon. So that will drop him down. Coulthard and Massa, top 11.
Yeah, dark and difficult days really for McLaren and Williams in many respects, where that's Button's 2nd stop of the afternoon. He was P12. He'd actually crept up to 10th with others having stopped, but you know, two teams that have pretty much dominated for 20-25 years until Ferrari got their act together. Button, does he get ahead of David Coulthard? Yes, he does. So that means he should then be somewhere near Raikkonen too. And when Raikkonen has had his 2nd stop, which has not taken place yet, but McLaren and Williams really did dominate, didn't they, for a couple of decades, and until Ferrari got their act together, and they're really struggling here today and this season in particular.
Not quite yet at the half stage then in the Spanish Grand Prix, the 14th to be staged on this beautiful circuit here, about half an hour outside the centre of Barcelona, one of the most popular venues in the Formula One calendar. As Martin was saying, the drivers know it like the back of their hand because they do thousands and thousands of miles of testing here. The Williams team alone already this year have done 6,000 miles of testing. We've got a drive-through penalty for car number 17, Olivier Panis. Started 7th on the grid today, has now dropped down into 13th place, and he's going to drop even further when he serves the drive-through penalty, presumably for speeding in the pit lane. There's Kimi Raikkonen. He's making his second stop of the afternoon. It'll be interesting to see where he is relative to the Button-Coulthard duel as Schumacher exits the final turn with the Toyota of, I think, D'Amata, who he's just lapped. So he's lapped everyone up to 16th place. There comes Panis on the left-hand side of your screen, just serving his drive-through penalty. He's arriving at turn 1, the same time as the race leader.
This is all about Montoya and Fisichella that you're just looking at now. Montoya 7th, Fisichella 6th. Fisichella on a 2-stopper this afternoon and carrying some good pace. So they're down, let's say, 6th and 7th, and Ted has some news.
And Martin, I think you're bang on about Rubens' tyre wear problems, because at Michael's second stop, Ross Brawn actually came off the pit wall and had a really good look at the left rear tyres. I think he wanted to get an idea of what kind of state they were in off Michael's car to see if Rubens really was in trouble with wear on those soft Bridgestones.
I think it's also, it's not just wear, but it is mostly, as you say, Ted, but, you know, the tyres take an enormous pounding around here. There's so many high-speed right-handers that it's the left rear that's taking the punishment, and he'll be concerned to know that Rubens, that is actually a 2-stopper at these incredible lap times that they're doing, is really on.
On board with Montoya then, trying to find a way past the Sauber of Giancarlo Fisichella, yet to get a top 10 finish so far this season. He's on for some points here, 3 points if he can stay in 6th place. On a different strategy from the other race leaders. That's your top 10 at the moment as we work on lap 32. Lap 33, the halfway stage of the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. You're riding on board with Fernando Alonso, currently running in 4th place. His teammate Jarno Trulli is 3rd, so 2 Renaults looking again to score some solid points. 2nd in the Constructors' Championship at the moment. But the 2 leaders, no question about that. Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello, they're doing 2 different strategies. Schumacher's on a 3-stopper, Barrichello's on a 2. I don't know whether Barrichello's been able to do enough. Ted, what can you tell us?
I've got news from Ferrari. I think Michael Schumacher's got a problem. There's a lot of activity on the pit wall, and every time the #1 Ferrari comes past the pits, the engine is sounding very rough. So I think it's one of 2 things. Either that engine has got a developing problem, or it's a cracked exhaust. If it's only a cracked exhaust, he might get away with it. But if it's an engine, well, that would be very rare, but it could happen.
Yeah, it's a cracked exhaust, can overheat bodywork and other wiring and what have you around, depends exactly where it cracks. But they do have failures. You see them in testing having problems. It's just they never seem to happen. They obviously get all the right bits on for race afternoon. Barrichello 4.6 adrift now. They're lapping in the 18s. But the Renaults are still there in 3rd and 4th, James. Alonso picking up pace as the Grand Prix goes on and beginning to home in on Trulli. And now Button's been released. He is fast too, up into 10th place and catching 9th place Massa very quickly. Can't hear any signs of misfires or cracked exhaust from that on board of Michael's. You have to be careful on that because sometimes you're hearing somebody else's car in these pictures.
Yeah, exactly. It's 0.3 of a second he was slower than Rubens Barrichello on that last lap, which is not exactly a terminal sounding problem. He's lapping pretty solidly at the moment is Michael Schumacher. There's Gianmaria Bruni. Looks like 2 Minardi retirements in this Grand Prix, and that's Nick Heidfeld, and that doesn't look too clever either. That looks like an engine problem, possibly in the Cosworth in the back of that Jordan. The Jordan Ford of Nick Heidfeld. Some talk that he might not see out the season with this team. Once again, Eddie Jordan saying it would be nice if Heidfeld could bring some money. And just whispers in the background that Jos Verstappen is going to test a Jordan in the not-too-distant future. Certainly the other driver, Giorgio Pantano, isn't pulling up too many trees in the second car. Quite a bit off the pace of Heidfeld, so Verstappen's test could be for either of those 2 seats, but we watch that situation with interest. Schumacher leading Barrichello, Trulli 3rd, Alonso 4th, Sato is 5th. Alonso managed to jump him at the 2nd round of pit stops to blow his podium charge off course. Fisichella having a super drive in the Sauber as we look at Bruni and the reason for his retirement just a couple of laps ago. Juan Montoya cannot pass the Sauber of Fisichella. He is mired in 7th place with Ralf Schumacher in 8th. So 2 Williamses looking to pick up at best 3 points. Meanwhile, the 2 McLarens are 11th and 12th, would you believe? Raikkonen.
Alonso still relentlessly pursuing his teammate and to see if he can get on the podium in front of his adoring Spanish crowd.
Well, we've got 18 cars still running. I'm sorry, we've got 4 cars have retired from this Grand Prix. Louise can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, I can. I can definitely tell you that Nick Heidfeld has gone out with a gearbox problem. Olivier Panis has a loss of hydraulic pressure, and we saw both the Minardi spinning off. I think it was just mistakes by their 2 drivers.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Heidfeld is a gearbox problem. Look more like the right-hand bank of that V10 to me. But anyway, we'll find out after the Grand Prix. This is Jenson Button chasing Felipe Massa, who's 9th for all he's worth. Massa hanging on, not quite in the points, but we said we thought Jenson could get in the points. You said they've challenged him to get up to P5. Well, he's working hard at it. He's got some laps to go yet, but it's 28 to go, of course. But Massa will not be an easy one to pass.
He won't. It'll be interesting for Williams and for Juan Montoya to see whether Button can get past Massa, because Montoya is holed up behind Massa's teammate Giancarlo Fisichella. Can you pass a Sauber in Spain? That's the challenge for both Button and Montoya at the moment. Montoya is 7th, Button is 10th and chasing points here this afternoon. Oh, we're looking at Michael Schumacher and talking about the cracked exhaust. It's an extraordinary statistic, but the last time that he retired from a Grand Prix with any kind of technical problem was back in the summer of 2001. The German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, 2001. A total of 43 races ago since the Ferrari last let him down. You might recall he binned it on that river of water in Brazil at the early part of last season. That was a crash rather than a technical failure that caused that retirement. Astonishing reliability for the Ferrari.
been confirmed that Heidfeld's Jordan did stop because of gearbox problems, so 4 non-runners then, as Louise explained to you. Michael Schumacher's lead now was 5.3. Barrichello's gone faster than him. It's down to 5.1. Let's have a look down the field to see where the fights are. Pretty much it's Massa and Button for 9th and 10th, and Coulthard and Raikkonen close together too, but they're 11th and 12th.
You know what I'd like to know, Martin? I'd like to know why, a few laps ago when Schumacher started to have some problems and his lap times drifted out to the high 1:19s, so did Barrichello's. That gap stayed around 5 seconds. And now Michael's speeded up again, and so has Barrichello. What's that all about, I wonder?
Didn't notice it, but I'd be surprised if there was a good conspiracy theory to go with that one, but it's a fact. What you say, the gaps stay pretty much the same, but I don't believe I don't think Rubens would necessarily be told to hold his distance. Perhaps he was given until that second stop of Michael's to make his strategy count. If not, it's too late, mate. Don't go and race each other too hard, because they've got nobody to beat now.
Well, that's true. Jarno Trulli is 8 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello. Far be it from me to suggest any conspiracies. I'm just interested. The numbers are what they are, and that gap stayed at 5 seconds, even through Michael's problems. Whatever he's adjusted in the car, if he is able to adjust anything in the car, seems to have worked, and his pace has really picked up again now. In just his last lap, a 1:18 flat, and that's a very, very good time. It's possible, I suppose, that traffic played a part in it. They did have to lap up to 13th place Mark Webber. So maybe that played a bigger part than was apparent from the TV pictures. As we look down there on Jarno Trulli, making steady progress, heading for what would be his first podium finish of the 2004 season. He's watched his teammate Alonso grab a podium in Australia. Trulli has been very consistent, had his best start to a Formula 1 season so far, but 4ths and 5ths have been his reward. Can he get the podium today?
Look at this. This is Michael Schumacher lining up the 2 McLarens to lap them. We're on lap 41. Such is the advantage of his car and his tyre package, I believe, at the moment, as the Sauber of Fisichella, who was running 7th, stops for his second and final time. First gear, it says. I always used to leave mine in first gear, otherwise you're always trying to clunk them in and keep the clutch down. A lot of the drivers do put them into neutral and back to first. I always felt that was adding a risk that you didn't need. And he comes out, importantly, in front of Kimi Raikkonen and David Coulthard.
One of the guests here this weekend of the McLaren team has been Jeff Gordon, the multiple NASCAR champion. Having a look, he of course drove the Williams last year in a test at Indianapolis, swapped cars with Juan Pablo Montoya, and had a good time was had by all. Pretty impressive performance by him, as Jarno Trulli pits from 3rd place. Looks pretty clean at the moment for the Renault driver. Quite a bit of fuel going in there, 9.2, quite a slow stop actually, but I think quite a bit of fuel going in there. And you can catch up the latest NASCAR action on Speed Sunday. Next Sunday, NASCAR, touring cars and Formula 3000. Join Matt Smith next Sunday afternoon to watch Speed Sunday. We'll also look back at this Spanish Grand Prix, and I look forward to the Blue Ribbon event, the Monaco Grand Prix, in 2 weeks' time. Schumacher then closing in on David Coulthard, who's 2.5 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen. Once again, the indignity of being lapped, as you said, Martin, for the McLaren team. Both Ron Dennis and Norbert Haug, the boss of Mercedes, this morning in their press briefing, holding their hands up and saying, listen guys, it's going to take us half a year at best. They're pinning all their hopes on a new B specification McLaren chassis, which is due to come out later this summer. All the development effort is going into that car, because this one has proven a bit of a turkey so far. Adrian Newey here this weekend. He's missed a few Grand Prix whilst he works on this development interim car, but he is here this weekend to oversee the effort, as Alonso picks from 3rd place in the Renault.
Yeah, he's been running well. There goes the fuel. What a thump that was, wasn't it? That's such a heavy piece of kit. That's why 2 men are hanging on to this, 3 holding on to it now to make sure it comes cleanly out. That works well, doesn't it? It's a good system.
It certainly does. Little thank you from Alonso with his right hand as he drives out. And you see one of the mechanics pulling the fuel man off. You can see there he rejoins behind Juan Montoya. Alonso,
here it is, Barrichello coming in. So, and then we're going to see a straight fight to the end when Michael's made his third. They'll be even Stevens. Same fuel level, one set of tyres to the end of the race, and Barrichello underneath. There it is on your screen now. Yeah, they're very late with the tyres. What on earth's going on there? The wheels weren't ready when he got in. I think they just about got away with that. Rubens cost him a couple. He wasn't ready to go, and yeah, they were just cruised in late with the tyres. What's that all about?
Well, I wonder. That was Michael Schumacher, meanwhile, has done a 1 minute 17.8, which is close to the fastest lap we've had so far here this afternoon. Out he comes then, Rubens Barrichello loses a place to Takuma Sato. It's all gone very pear-shaped for Rubens Barrichello. Ted, what can you tell us?
Well, that was just a straight mistake by the team. They were the guys in the pit box were gesturing, come on, get them out there. There must have been a mistake with whose tyres were whose. They were very slow getting them out of the blankets and just delivered them as Rubens was actually in the box. Still mistake, very rare mistake by Ferrari. Montoya now stopping right in front of me. A little problem on the rear, but he gets away cleanly. McLaren are also ready.
But Ted, how can that happen? You tell us up in the commentary box that they're pitting for Rubens Barrichello anytime soon. We tell the viewers, how on earth can the team not know that?
The only thing that I can assume is that they got mixed up between whose tyres were in which blankets. Maybe they brought Michael's tyres out first and then realised, hang on, these are the wrong blankets, these are the wrong tyres, because they certainly didn't have the right ones when Rubens came in.
Coulthard and Montoya both in the pits at the moment. I remember when Eddie Irvine was driving the second Ferrari. Do you recall that? The Nürburgring again in 1999. They had no tyres ready for him at all. You talked about it being a committee meeting to decide which tyres to stick onto the car. After that, they put a hard and fast system, which it doesn't allow for the mechanics to bring the wrong tyres out anymore. That system's been in place since 1999. It's not possible for that to happen at Ferrari anymore. I do not understand what happened there.
They're just watching Coulthard again, stopping. Still, that refueler looked a bit reluctant to depart the car. But they need to look at the Renault system, don't they, with like half the team hanging onto the thing when it's ready to come out. So that's costing Coulthard badly 3 times. It looks like it's getting less problematical each time, but nonetheless has put him behind his teammate.
Rubens Barrichello now falling 34 seconds then behind team leader Michael Schumacher. Before Rubens made his stop, he was 4.8 seconds behind his team leader, and they both had another stop to make. Rubens now on the new tyres. This is when they're at their fastest, and we'll see what kind of lap times he's able to do as the race leader comes in for what should be a fairly routine stop. Fuel goes in. He goes back out again, 8.3. Serene progress. And Rubens Barrichello will not have the chance to attack him, as he would have had that not gone badly wrong for Ferrari with that stop. Ted.
Yeah, Ross Brawn taking a very, very close look. It looked like the left side of the exhaust system of Michael Schumacher's car. He seemed, well, vaguely satisfied with the situation. Not much they can do about it anyway. Send him on his way.
Yeah, they can hardly get in there with some gun gum, can they, and seal it up, or a bandage. But the Jaguar then of Klein off the track. He was running down in 15th as Sato pits. That's going to be quite important to see where he filters back onto the racetrack. We're watching Klein exiting his car. I want to see where Sato feeds back in.
Yeah, because he was battling with Alonso and Ralf Schumacher. You can see the Jaguar just pulling off the track there. So that's yet another retirement for the Jaguar team. Their 3rd retirement of this season so far. They've improved their reliability, generally speaking, but once again here, a problem there for Klein. As you saw, Ralf Schumacher exiting the pits as well. So where did Sato rejoin? He was in 3rd place.
He was behind the 2 Renaults, wasn't he? So
yeah, before the stop, he was in 3rd place, so he'd have fed in behind those 2. Well, we'll find out shortly as Klein looks down the racetrack. The only racing driver, only Formula 1 driver to wear an earring in his left ear. The 21-year-old with plenty of attitude, Christian Klein. As we ride on board with Michael Schumacher, chasing Grand Prix win number 75 in his extraordinary career. If he does that, he'll have won as many as Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark, and Nelson Piquet all put together. 3 of the greatest drivers in history of the sport, and he's better than all of them added together. Schumacher leading then, lap 47 of 66. Barrichello 10.6 seconds behind after that stop for the race leader. Trulli 17 seconds behind Schumacher. Then it's a way back to Alonso, 10 more seconds back in 4th place. Sato did filter back in 5th place, ahead of Ralf Schumacher in 6th. ...18 laps to go in this 66-lap Spanish Grand Prix, and Rubens Barrichello, who lost 5 seconds in a very, very slow second pit stop just a few laps ago, he is now pushing very hard. He's made back 2 of them. He's 8.5 seconds behind his team leader, Michael Schumacher, and lapping 1.3 seconds a lap faster, but we've lost Juan Montoya. Ted, tell us about it.
In a very dramatic way, he's had to retire from this race with total and complete, almost catastrophic brake failure. What happened? He came in for his pit stop and he didn't have any brakes. He actually ran right into his front jackman. The front jackman collapsed and hit the front nose of the car. He's okay though, he's got up, but they tried to fix it, but the brakes were just, there were none left. There was smoke and fire coming all over it, and he's had to get out of the car and retire. Too bad.
So unusual for that to happen in Barcelona with all the testing they do. It's just not a brake circuit, and Montoya there very kindly just checking his jackman was in one piece.
Nice touch that from Juan Montoya. The human touch, terribly, terribly important within a team. Williams boys desperately disappointed that Montoya is going to be leaving them next year to go to the McLaren team. They like him. They call him the monster, and he really does hustle their car around. News on Jenson Button. He is up into 8th place. Now Juan Montoya is talking to Louise.
Juan Pablo, I understand a catastrophic brake failure. When did it start causing you problems?
From about lap 3.
So you've had a tough day out there then?
Yeah, brake pedal was very long all day. And when I got to the first stop, I had nearly no brakes, and then they came back. And then when Fisichella pitted, I started pushing really hard and for the stop, and then when we came out of the pits, there's nothing. And I was going straight to the end. I was just about to, I was doing everything with the engine, and they told me to come in. I came in quite slow and everything. When I pressed the brakes, there's nothing. I just went straight.
I'm surprised you're actually smiling about it, because really a podium was on the cards today, wasn't it?
I knew this race was going to be a nightmare. It's been every year very hard on the car and everything, and on balancing. And we did a good job yesterday putting the car in qualifying. Had a good start initially, and then everybody just out-dragged us.
Thanks, Juan Pablo.
Well, Jenson Button, I was just mentioning there before we threw down to Louise, up into 8th place. He was losing about a second to a second and a half a lap behind Felipe Massa in the Sauber. He's now got past him. He's in 8th place, and he's got some clear air before he goes to attack Giancarlo Fisichella, who's currently in 7th place. So Button was set the target of 5th today by the BAR team, starting 14th on the grid. He's worked his way up into 8th place, and he's got another 16 laps, Martin, in which to give us a bit of a grandstand finish.
Yep, and Alonso too is slowly moving in to the back of his teammate Trulli for 3rd and 4th. Can he give us a showboat finish then for the Spaniards here? At the moment, he's got a lot of work to do. He'll have to pick his pace up even harder than he's going. Coulthard's in ahead of Raikkonen now. Raikkonen, we saw them changing, I think, a battery or some kind of electronic control unit on the side of his car in his pit stop. But they're back in 11th and 12th. Webber up to 10th now. So Fisichella 7th, Massa 9th in the 2 Saubers. They do have a chance of some points today.
We're riding on board with Takuma Sato. You can see there, that's the gap from Alonso. 4th Alonso, 2.5 seconds to Sato in 5th place. Started 3rd here this afternoon on the grid, ran 3rd in the first part of the Grand Prix, but lost his chance of a podium slot really in the middle part of the Grand Prix. Doesn't quite have the pace today. Interestingly, the BAR, considering they were the fastest car here throughout the free practice session. And then also interestingly, the Renaults have been going very, very well. Their race pace far better than their qualifying pace yesterday.
Yes, and it wasn't because they were heavy on fuel in qualifying either, because they were one of the first teams to stop of anybody this afternoon. But Webber pits then for his 3rd out of 10th. He'll now slip behind the 2 McLarens. Teammate Klein in the 2nd Jaguar already out of the Grand Prix. So Montoya, no brakes. Klein pulled to the side with a problem. Panis stopped out in the 1st sector, as did Heidfeld with technical problems. Bruni stopped on the side of the road in the Minardi. Baumgartner spun off. 14 runners.
Interesting, while you were talking, Schumacher going out the door there off towards Toyota, but a number of the midfield drivers, Fisichella today putting in a strong run in 7th to underline his claim to a decent seat.
Yeah, I think Fisichella and Heidfeld will be trying hard. Clearly Coulthard looking for a drive. I'm pretty sure Ralph's gone to Toyota. Mark Webber, I think, will be the pivotal one when the music stops and everybody sits down in their Formula One seat. I think it'll be the moment when Webber's settled, from what I can see of the way it's unfolding. That's the general feeling in the paddock anyway.
Yeah, and I think the mix of him, the no-nonsense Aussie straightforward hard-working approach, with that of Patrick Head and Sir Frank Williams, I think that's a magic combination. So whether we'll see that at all next year, I don't know, but let's hope we do. Not taking anything away from the Jaguar team, they're a fantastic outfit, and I'm sure they will grow with Mark Webber, but somehow you just think that the Webber-Williams combination is one we'd really like to see in Formula One.
Some talk that Jacques Villeneuve will be testing the Williams in the next week or few weeks, I should say. Some people denying that, others almost confirming it. So it's not a hard fact, but I think it's highly possible that Villeneuve will test the Williams.
Well, I was one of a number of journalists yesterday afternoon trying to get that information out of Frank Williams. Is Villeneuve going to drive your car? What about Webber? It's like trying to get blood out of a stone. No man plays his cards closer to his chest when it comes to who's driving his cars the next year than Frank Williams. And that is Pantano in the 2nd of the Jordan. So it looks like a double retirement for Jordan here this afternoon. That's not good for them. I wrongly diagnosed it as an engine failure for Heidfeld. It was a gearbox failure. Nevertheless, that's the 6th retirement in 10 starts for the Jordan team. So reliability proving as much of a problem as pace for Jordan this year. Lap 55 then, 12 to go. Can Alonso catch Trulli? He's certainly trying. 0.6 of a second he took out of him that last lap. Can Button catch Fisichella? 0.4 he took out of him that last lap. Could be a grandstand finish here in Barcelona. Just 10 laps to go here in Barcelona. Michael Schumacher now easing away slightly once again from teammate Rubens Barrichello. 10 seconds the margin at the front. Jarno Trulli is in third, but his teammate Fernando Alonso is closing him down. There is Alonso, spurred on by the 110,000 Spanish crowd here. Last year, he really chased Michael Schumacher hard, couldn't do anything about him though, and finished second, but it was a great drive by Alonso. And once again today, he's hard charging. Had a poor grid slot, but managed to put that behind him. Started 8th. Teammate Jarno Trulli led in the opening phase of the Grand Prix, but Michael Schumacher was able to leapfrog him in the first round of pit stops. Schumacher's teammate Barrichello has been on a different strategy from his team leader, and it looked as though it was really working for him, but then Rubens couldn't quite keep the pace up before the pit stops. In his own second stop of the afternoon, his tyres were not there for him. The Ferrari mechanics just weren't there with them, and Rubens dropped back to 10 seconds behind when he had really been challenging Michael Schumacher. Looked like he was going to be very strong in the final phase of the Grand Prix. It wasn't to be. Takuma Sato, he was running in third place in the early part of the Grand Prix for BAR, who promised so much coming into this Grand Prix, but he's been leapfrogged by both of the Renaults here this afternoon. We've lost the shout for his performance this afternoon. It's been a strong afternoon for him.
Ted has news on Ferrari.
Absolutely incredible how Michael Schumacher's been able to control this cracked exhaust, Martin. I've been into the Ferrari garage. The message coming over the radio from Ross Brawn to Michael is just keep low revs, keep it as low as possible, don't stress anything, and they should make it. But I tell you what, his performance hasn't dropped off at all, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's that big a deal in exhaust. You lose a bit of power because your exhausts are tuned to give you the torque and the power from them and the layout of them as they exit the car. But as I said earlier, you know, it's a nuisance, but as long as it doesn't set fire to anything, he'll be absolutely fine. It might be 20 horsepower or something, nothing more than that.
Well, I'm sure they'll be analysing and deconstructing what exactly went on in Schumacher's exhaust in Speed Sunday next Sunday afternoon over on ITV1, but as you say, Martin, it's not slowing him down at all, and perhaps that's a margin of just how good, a marker rather, of just how good this Ferrari is, that even with a cracked exhaust on a sunny day in Spain, Schumacher can still maintain a winning pace with 4 laps to go here this afternoon. Just give you an indication of what he's doing at the moment. He's lapping in the high 1-minute 18s, and his fastest lap, which is the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, set on lap 12, shortly after his first stop for fuel and tyres, a 1:17.4, which is absolutely mesmerising and is 0.2 faster than last year's pole position. So a tremendous leap forward taken by Ferrari this year.
Indeed, Jenson Button down in 8th has given up the chase of Fisichella, now lapping quite slowly, in fact very, very slowly. Jenson Button, 1:22, that's 4 or 5 seconds away from the pace. Let's hope as we move into the very final stage of this Grand Prix that Button doesn't have a problem and lose that World Championship point. Massa's 14 seconds behind him. He's got a bit of space there, but Button clearly with some kind of problem in the car. The Renaults are still at it, tooth and nail. Anytime now, somebody's going to have a sensible pill and raid them and say, that's it, that's enough, boys. Slow down, you're not going to fight any longer, because they're pushing each other hard for 3rd and 4th, but they're not going to gain anything, and there's nobody challenging them. Sato 7.6 seconds adrift of them in 5th, and Renault need to just settle in now and take what they've got.
Well, I know Nigel Mansell likes to keep abreast of Formula 1 developments. I don't know if he's watching us at his home in Jersey or possibly at his golf club down in Devon at Woodbury Park, but he set the record, 5 first Grand Prix of the season back in 1992, won them all from pole position, and Michael Schumacher is now just 3 laps away from equaling that record. No man has ever won the first 6 races of the season. Is Schumacher going to be the first to take that record as well to add to his collection?
Step still 1:18.2, even though he looks like he's coasting. And I really enjoyed voicing over his qualifying lap today for the show as our track guide, just to see the brilliance of how he controls the car with using both pedals and just brake and throttle, and just balances the car so beautifully. He's on another plane at the moment, Michael Schumacher.
It's really important for us to understand exactly what he's doing, to appreciate him while he's still here. I know some people say, oh, well, he wins all the time. Yes, he does win an awful lot. He's won over 50% of all the Grand Prix since he switched over to Ferrari back in 1996. Incredible statistic, but when you get an opportunity like that, just to see it on an onboard lap, exactly how he does it, how he balances the car, how much energy and speed he carries into the corners, the commitment, as you said, out of the final turn, quite different from anything anybody else. Believe it, it's win number 75 for Michael Schumacher. There is Rubens Barrichello. At the end of the day, he crosses the line 13 seconds behind his team leader, but he challenged him in the early part of the Grand Prix. A couple of question marks about what happened with his tyre supply at one of the pit stops. I'm sure Ferrari will have an inquest about that. That scuppered his race. And a formation finish for Renault. Trulli gets his podium, much deserved, and Fernando Alonso stops to acknowledge the Renault team hanging off the pit wall. There he is, big wave to the Spanish crowd. Fine result today for the Renault team.
Sato has crossed the line in 5th. Everybody lapped up until 7th place man, Fisichella. It's a long lap around here too. And we're still waiting for Ralf Schumacher, P6, Fisichella P7. Button has been lapped, so will not cross the line now.
Well, as Alonso acknowledges the crowd, we've got the podium coming up very shortly. Welcome back to Barcelona, where Michael Schumacher has won his 5th Grand Prix of the season, on course to break some serious records in 2004. Rubens Barrichello gave him a race. He had nothing to lose by trying a different strategy from Schumacher. Schumacher was on a 3-stopper and a very aggressive one at that. Barrichello yesterday in qualifying opted to carry a bit more fuel, quite a lot more fuel in fact, and almost made it pay off for him, but just didn't quite have the pace himself when he came out from his first pit stop in order to get Schumacher at his 2nd stop, and it just didn't quite work out for Barrichello. Then when he made his own 2nd stop, the tyres weren't ready. There's the congratulations from the Ferrari team for him. So Schumacher, another Ferrari 1-2, the 3rd of the season so far, with Jarno Trulli picking up a podium in 3rd place. Now he would be a serious contender for me for driver of the day, but who are you going to give it to today?
Well, Michael Schumacher looks like he's just won his first Grand Prix ever, doesn't he? Which is incredible. 200 starts, 75 wins. But for me, Trulli did the best job of the day. His car didn't look all that good. He kept a good pace up, led the Grand Prix well. And I think I would agree with you. He would be the man that would just ace it for me. Really only 2 contenders for that today, but Fisichella deserves a strong mention down there in 7th in the Sauber. And it's just the sort of day that they should be scoring points when quite clearly Bridgestone had a tyre performance over Michelin.
Yeah, it's been a good day for Fisichella. His previous results 10th, 11th, 11th and 9th. So pretty strong for him to get the 7th place finish and 2 World Championship points for Sauber to go for the one that Felipe Massa scored earlier in the season. There's Flavio Briatore. Well, not very pleased, does he?
He's not very pleased because they were half a minute behind, really, and Flavio has sort of set his heart on Renault becoming a top team, the top team. But the mighty Ferrari. So, but look, they're solid 2nd place in the championship. BR Honda 2 cars in the points again. Flavio, I think the shake of the head was he knows how hard it is to find a half a minute in a Grand Prix, especially when you know that Ferrari haven't really been stretched yet.
Talking there to Louis Schweitzer, the current president of the Renault company, the big boss, the man who sanctioned their return to Formula One, retiring later this year to make way for a new man. There's Nigel Stepney, chief mechanic of the Ferrari team, who's been a pivotal part in this team. Niki Lauda there, doing a little bit of work for German TV, keeping his hand in Formula One, even though he's no longer involved. Was the boss of Jaguar as recently as a couple of years ago, as you recall. So, an eventful afternoon, not a thrilling Grand Prix, but Ferrari throwing the dice for Rubens Barrichello, trying something a little bit different. And
unusually high number of retirements today. We've seen immense reliability, but 7 cars dropping out of the Grand Prix, only 1 of them spinning, so 6 then that have just plain broken down. Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. She was having to come to the grid earlier on, but wasn't feeling too good. Obviously looking and feeling a bit better now.
In her court case, she said $1 million isn't a lot of money to us, do you remember? So she's in very, very good company in the Formula One paddock, I think.
There is the Parc Fermé. The top 3 cars will be remaining there. Coulthard making his way back through the crowd. He's so used to being up there on the podium, getting a share of the champagne. I don't know how he's had about 60 of those now, Coulthard, but he was nowhere near one today as Schumacher emerges to the red carpet of his adoring Ferrari team just underneath the podium.
Not quite as big a shout as it would have been if Alonso had stood up there, but nevertheless a worthy winner. Well, the German national anthem and the Italian one, you hear them so often these days on the podium, you'd be forgiven for thinking they're one and the same tune, wouldn't you? I'm sure some of our younger viewers probably do think that. The King of Spain, His Royal Highness Juan Carlos. He's got Martin Brundle's phone number in his pocket, and he's just handed a magnificent trophy to Michael Schumacher. Paolo Martinelli on the left-hand side there is the engine man from Ferrari. He's going to get the Constructors' Trophy from the MD of Philip Morris Spain. Beautiful trophy it is too. Schumacher then has 6 of these in his trophy cabinet now.
Trophy building, I would think it would be by now, won't it?
75 winners' cups. An amazing 126 podiums. So 127 now cups. There's Rubens. He tried something different. Didn't quite work for him, as it so often doesn't for the Ferrari number 2. And a very well-deserved podium trophy for Jarno Trulli, our driver of the day.
Important day for Jarno Trulli because his contract's up at the end of the year, and I'm sure Flavio, who also manages Webber and got a lot of other young drivers, Montani's around there, and I think they were wondering what to do with Trulli in the future, and I think he's very much cementing his position there.
So that was Spain. Next Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time is Monaco. Enzo Ferrari used to say a win at Monaco is worth half a world championship. Schumacher is already halfway there.
Como